Welcome to the Procast. Today's guest has 4 decades of experience in the construction sector and at least 3 decades in external wall insulation. We also find out what motivates him, why he's so passionate about raising standards, doing good things for our energy efficiency industry. He's well known and popular individual in our sector, also known as Mr. Swifix. We welcome Paul Brown to our podcast. Paul, good afternoon. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Nick. It's a pleasure to be here.
So we did a little bit of research on you by asking people close to you, tell us a little bit about Paul, and they've described you as outspoken, says what's on his mind, slapdashy, but he gets things done. Is that an accurate description?
Yeah, I could understand why people perhaps feel that about me. I wouldn't say I'm slapdash, but I think I could come across that way. But yeah, that's a fair assumption.
But you deliver, that's the main thing.
I try and deliver in everything I do. It's just the way, that's who I am. If I've set my goal and I set my mind on something, I want to make sure I get to the end and actually achieve that, really.
So let's go back in time a little bit, how it all started. So tell us a little bit about your first job and kind of how you got into all of it.
Well, coming back a few years there, my first job was actually not of my choosing. I have to be honest, I was an army cadet when I was in school, and I wanted to join the army. That was my passion at the time. But unfortunately, during those times, there was quite a lot of
Was that the Falklands?
No, it was more so around the troubles in Ireland.
Okay.
And my parents said, "There's no way you're going into the army because we don't want you to go over there. So we've got you a job. You start on Monday. You're going to be an apprentice plasterer." Which was fine. I started as an apprentice plasterer at Exeter College. I have to say I was pretty good at it. I won the National Apprentice of the Year when I finished my course. But I had a passion for restoring ornamental plasterwork.
Okay.
So I left college and I stayed on site doing traditional plastering for a while. And then within about a year, I joined an interior designer. So I actually worked on a lot of national trust buildings and listed buildings, restoring ornamental plasterwork.
What's the thing that kind of stands out at that time?
Oh, the standout thing for me is that I actually refurbished a project in the outskirts of Plymouth called Mount Edgecombe. It's a Grade 1 listed building, and I restored and replaced a lot of the ornamental plasterwork that was failed in there. And about sort of 6 months later, there was a TV program, a gardening program, because this particular property has Grade 1 listed rose gardens, of all things. So it was a gardening program, and they showed you inside the house, and this presenter was saying, "Look at all this amazing ornamental plasterwork. You just don't get skilled people like this anymore." And I'm thinking, well, I was there 6 months ago and I've done it, so they are around. So that was a really nice thing for me to sort of see some of my work on the local television. It was there sort of that things didn't work out there. He unfortunately folded the business. So I was then looking for a new job, and that's where I got into external wall insulation.
How many years were you?
So I was doing ornamental plastering for about 2 years, for about 2.5 years. Because when he went bust, I'd continued with some contracts that were still going for large contractors. So I finished those works off and got paid directly from them. So I set my first business up called Periodic Plasterwork. And I did it for a couple of years. But the reality was that, I was on my own, and a lot of the big projects that were being tendered, you needed sort of half a dozen people to actually deliver the timescale. So it was either a choice of growing that and finding people that could do this kind of skill. But unfortunately, the year I finished my apprenticeship was the last for 3-year apprenticeship under City and Guilds. They changed the whole system, and you could become a plasterer in a year, which that's another conversation.
I've seen some other
interesting
things happen. So then you mentioned the word external insulation.
Yeah,
that's our sector. What was? I mean, did you sort of hear an advert or someone mentioned it?
No, I was approached by a very small company called Connaught Southern at the time, based in Sidmouth in Devon, and they were advertising for external wall installers, and it was something I'd never sort of really come across as a traditional plasterer. And I did my research and thought, actually, this is a plastering skill. This is a qualified plasterer can do this work. So literally went out to the sector and got qualified in terms of awareness of system materials that were available at the time. And I started working as a subcontractor for Connell, and I was doing lots of high-rise buildings with gangs of people. And I did that for about another 2 years. And then this was at the time, it was the late 80s. There was a recession started to bite. Mortgage rates were 15%, works dried up. And Connell then offered me a job as a site manager to manage some of the bigger EWI projects because they were becoming probably the largest installer of EWI in the country at that time. So I then basically joined them.
It was different to Connaught Southern, yeah?
So Connaught Southern was a family-owned business based in the southwest, yeah. So I joined that business, as I say, as a site manager, and then I literally worked all over the country. I worked in London, I worked in Wales, I worked all over the country delivering EWI. And over the next 5 years with Connaught, they diversified their sector into government-funded work, which was the Decent Homes program, where a lot of local authorities sold off their housing, and then obviously was created registered social landlords, charity status that managed the property. They then diversified into kitchens and bathrooms and electrical maintenance, gas maintenance, and all sorts of compliance issues. And during this sort of 10 to 15 years, they floated on the market, at which time I was continually going on training courses. I then trained and did an equivalent master's degree in leadership and management. And come the end of my tenure with Connaught, I was actually an integration director. So they would make an acquisition, a gas business, for example. I would go in, I would actually Connaughtize it, as we called it at the time. So get all their policies and processes in, look at the structure, look at the financial models. And I did that with two businesses. One was a retail business, working in the retail sector, refurbishing the Living Well brand, part of the Hilton Group. And we were working for people like Debenhams and all the high street brands doing fit outs. So that was a really good learning experience for me working in the retail sector. Once that sort of happened, they bought another business, which was a gas business in Wales. It started out with about £10 million a year, losing £1 million. So my job was to go in there and have a look and see how we could turn that around to give Connaught a base in Wales to expand their portfolio of work.
So definitely, from what you've said, is an absolutely distinguished career then, that span potentially 15 years?
So that sort of happened with Connaught. I was at Connaught for 20 years. So the last 5 years of my tenure at Connaught, I was the area director responsible for the southwest of the UK. And that was delivering all of those services I mentioned to social housing landlords. So we were doing their repair and maintenance, we were doing their gas checks, doing their electric checks. And it's where I got introduced to renewable technologies. We were one of the first companies to introduce air source heat pumps for Housing Association in Cornwall. And I'm going back 1990, mid-90s, late 90s. But unfortunately, the Connaught business wasn't what I joined. Unfortunately, it was a people business when I joined. It was all about...
And that's the thing I was going to come to. So you made a lot of good friends.
Oh, I've made some lifelong friends that I'm friendly with now. And the culture of the business, the thing for me with Connaught, it was an amazing business. And to this day, you bump into people that work for Connaught, they go, what an amazing place it was. And it was until, unfortunately, greed or whatever it may have been took over, and it was floated on the stock market. And all of a sudden, the culture went from not about putting the people first, but putting the shareholders first. And to be honest, it got to the point I actually left.
Always, things kind of happen naturally, cycles of businesses and things like that. But just to kind of conclude on that moment there, what was your proudest moment there, you'd say?
I think my proudest moment was that, I developed a business in the Southwest employing over 600 people, delivering some really, really high levels of quality of standard. But the thing I take from Connaught is that they gave me a 20-year apprenticeship to run a business. I saw in those 20 years, not only having done every job from operational management to estimating to getting involved in marketing, business development, finance, IT control, data management, it gave me so much knowledge and experience in 20 years that is what I take from that. Because I look back now and the things I know and I've learned over those years has really put me in a really positive place today in terms of what I'm trying to achieve now.
So that's very interesting what you said, and my take on that is definitely for any kind of youngsters out there. And we talk a lot about, you and I and other people that we're connected to, about growing green skills and getting more people into the sector. Is get yourself in, but then really get into it and really sort of apply with passion and learn, every day.
It's a massive opportunity, which I'm sure we'll talk about later when we talk about the education. But my career then went on. I took 6 months off, if I've been to be honest. And I went to Australia and I toured around Australia and met some friends that had moved there. And we came back from Australia saying, do you know what? I'd like to live there. We can sell up, we can move over there and start a whole new life.
That's very interesting. I didn't know.
That was the plan. That was the plan in my head. That was the plan. It was like we could cash everything in, go out there, buy a house, and not have to worry about a high-powered, stressful job. I could just go and sweep the beach and get paid. And that was the idyllic life. But unfortunately, life isn't like that. And I joined a company, and I was approached. I joined a company called Midas Construction, Midas Group, based in the Southwest, and they asked me if I could help develop their maintenance offering. But also with my knowledge in renewable technology at that point, I actually said that we could set up an internal renewable business that could satisfy their new build construction. So basically I set about setting up My Energy, which was a renewable business within the Midas Group, and was there about 18 months, during which time, at that time, PV was quite a big player. The 43p feed-in tariff was there. It was a way to make money. And that was seen by investment companies. So the rent-to-roof became very, very popular. Midas was approached by an investor and said, look, we've got 2,000 installations of PV. We'd like you to deliver it for us. And worked with that organization for a number of months, and actually spent time training people to get them to deliver solar PV panels and installations. So training electricians, etc. And literally, we got to the point where we were about to sign the contracts with this client, and the Midas team said that unfortunately, Paul, we're going to withdraw from this. It's a private investment. It's not commercial. It's not really our core business. So unfortunately, I had to tell the customer that we were going to pull out, which they weren't too happy about.
What time of what
roughly what year?
So this was 2012. And so having told this customer that, they looked at me and said, well, but you're the pivotal person in all this. Why don't you do it? As I explained to them, I didn't have an infrastructure. I was an employee. And they said, we got 3 months. Can you do it? So I went on to my wife and said, I've been given an opportunity of a lifetime. I have a £20 million contract. We can sign an NEC contract. I can make this work. And literally the next 3 months, when I left MySpace immediately, because they allowed me to go because of this opportunity. So within 3 months, I'd set a business up. We had 12 direct employees. We had 80 teams of installers. I'd taken the business through MCS, through PAS, through Green Deal, through ISO 9000 and all the accreditations we needed. And then we started delivering. And I thought, this is it. This is my moment. I've worked all these years with this experience and now I can put it into practice. And we worked. It was great. It was great for 2 months. And then the government made the announcement they were going to cut the feed-in tariffs and they were going to go into consultation. But unfortunately, it wasn't a consultation. It's happening in the next few weeks. Ultimately, I then received a call from my client saying, we need a meeting. I drove to meet them and they told me that they were withdrawing, of which I took relatively well. And I couldn't understand why I took it relatively well. And as I explained to them, under an NEC formal contract, then they have to at least give me my upfront costs, which by that time I'd invested several £100,000 of my own money. To be told that, no, we won't, because we liquidated the business this morning. The ultimate aim with that was I had no choice with the overhead I had and the people I had to liquidate the business, and pretty much lost everything that I ever worked for. My family home, cars, all the trappings of a successful career. But the most important thing that really hurt was the people that had joined me, that I'd worked with, that I cared about. I had to tell them that there was no longer a job anymore. Worst day of my life.
Wow. That's, I didn't know that. That's,
but
you pick yourself up.
But you pick yourself up. And I took a call from an ex-colleague of mine who said, do you know what, Paul, I've heard what's happened. It's not your fault. I'm looking for a managing director of a renewables business. So I went to work for this renewables business. And this is where I came across the issue with timber mattresses and the quality of EWI.
So tell me that the Swifix idea, because we're moving sort of a little bit fast forward, but relatively near cast. Was that the immediate idea?
No, it wasn't an idea that came to me immediately. I got back involved in external wall in terms of managing it, and we actually, with this organisation, delivered the largest and the first eco scheme in the Southwest, delivering 2,000 houses for the client.
Eco1, was it?
Eco1, yeah, Eco1. It's the largest installation of its kind. So we put a team together and, I started then seeing the reality of what the practical installation was like. And I was seeing, not just on this site, but around the country, um, the use of pallets being dug out of the ground as timber mattresses, as opposed to when I was doing it in the 80s, hardwood, oak wood, mahogany used, treated, fitted correctly, which I still did question why using a lump of timber. For me, it was the analogy of I'm taking my car in to have a dent repaired. They're going to fill it with polyfiller and they're going to spray over it. So it looks fantastic. But in a minute, at some point, that's going to fail because it's not right. And that was the philosophy. And I looked around at the alternative methods of fitting through external wall without compromising any of the warranties and guarantees. And there were a couple of products out there on the market. The problem is with those products, they were very expensive. And to add that to a tender price would probably eliminate the tender race because you're using the proper product. So it was obvious that that was never going to happen. So it was then I thought, right, I'm going to develop something that is more cost effective than using timber mattresses, that provides a better aesthetic finish. It gives a higher capacity for load bearing. And overall, it's a much better solution. And that's where the idea came from. And that idea sprung literally from a simple task 30 years prior when a little old lady came in and said, I would like to see a hanging basket there. And my instant response is I can't because there's no timber block there. And she went on and on and on. And in the end, I just thought, right, I tell you what I'll do. I just went down to the merchant. I got a bit of 15 mil copper pipe, cut it to the depth of the insulation. I got a metal washer and literally I installed it through that. And all I've done is taken the concept of that and developed a whole suite of products. Now, people say to me today, well, why didn't you develop it back then? Well, if I tell you that literally back in the 80s, early 90s, there were 7,000 domestic installations done a year. That's it. It was never going to grow more than that quickly. So therefore, it wasn't really a business idea. Fast forward 2012, 2013, the introduction of ECO, CESP funding, SERP funding, ECO funding, Green Deal homes grants, voucher schemes, all these things to help support the industry. All of a sudden, there's 100,000 properties being done a year in 2012, 2013. Slightly scaled back now a little bit because the funding models have changed, but there's still quite a few thousand being done. And with the decarbonisation funding that's available now, I only see a massive growth in this. So therefore, that's why I developed the product.
So go back a little bit. So why I'm also particularly interested in, so I'm quite passionate for products and new solutions and things like that. So tell me a little bit what goes into a product design, taking that idea and.
Yeah, it is a simple, it is as people say, oh, it's a simple idea, but it's not that simple to develop something like that because the original concept was we manufactured them out of stainless steel because they needed to be solid, strength, robust, and fireproof. The reality for me is that when we launched it, I didn't really consider, and I should have with my knowledge, that if you're going to be cutting metal on a building site, you need hot work permits and you're going to create a lot of paperwork and administration in using it. And that's why I think I scrapped the idea and thought I need to rethink this and then develop them out of plastic. Now, the single tube, for example, it looks like a simple tube, but actually the way it's designed is actually tapered to allow installation. The neoprene washers have been developed specifically to do a job to stop water penetration. The screw caps we now provide are bespoke to the kit. So what I wanted to develop was not just a product that would end the use of timber mattresses. I wanted to make sure that I developed a product that was aesthetically pleasing to that installation. And most importantly, the whole driving force was that end use customer knowing that the products they've got installed are fit for purpose, are going to last, and is going to protect their huge investment in EWI. It's all about the customer. That was what drove me is I need to develop something that when the customer uses it, they know it's the right product for the right application that's going to last the lifetime of the EWI.
And where do you see it going? Because we had a little discussion in the car on the way here and, you were telling me about utility providers and some of the positive discussions you've had. So tell us a little bit about how that's.
I have to be honest. And I have to say that the introduction of PAS 2035 sort of 2.5 years ago, has only helped support the growth of the business because, timber mattresses are now not acceptable practice. So having a product already there developed for that sector was really positive. And that's why I've seen in excess of 150 to 200% growth in the last 2 years. We've now secured contracts with people like Sky, with City Fibre. We're in negotiations with Openreach, GigaClear, Virgin Media. We already supply people like Equans and some of the larger contractors. We are now being specified by every project the MOD actually completes. And more recently, we've literally just launched it into Europe. So the future for Swifix to me is that it's taken a lot longer than I thought. And I think that's not because of, you develop a great product, you develop it so it's cheaper than the competition. But the challenge for me, which has taken a lot longer, is you're trying to change the way somebody's been doing something for 20 years. It's that old adage in any business, change. It's difficult to change people's mindset. But the reality is now that people's minds are being changed because they have to look for an alternative to a timber patch. And when they come to Swifix, it's the most cost-effective solution on the market, full stop.
Is that the only challenge you face with it?
I've found challenges in that when taking it to system designers, they initially liked the product. They thought it was a really good idea, but they very rarely, in the early days, supported it. They've literally gone, well, it's not our responsibility. Go and speak to the plumber who's fitting the gas pipe. Go and speak to the electrician who's putting the cables on. And that made the market size for me probably 1,000 times bigger than it should have been, because with 20 odd system designers, they could have specified it. But unfortunately, they said it's not part of their system. There's a risk to it. Now, what that risk was, nobody ever told me. But I can tell you from the conversation I have with some senior people in senior organizations, it's all about the money to them, not about the end customer, as much as they might say it. That told me everything I needed to know about what was their business strategy. It's all about making money. Sitting in front of people said, look, but you know that if this is incorrectly fitted, these items, that basically it's going to fail. And one of them looked at me and laughed and said, yeah, great, even more money for us. And I just walked out of that meeting thinking, I've got a real challenge in my hands to get this into market, to be the product of choice and to become what I set out as a mission, to redefine best practice.
But it is a product of choice. So
I'd say now.
I think it is now. I think it is now, but we are 7 years in now, Nick. It's taken 7 years for me to get to this, and it's been difficult. I'm not going to say it was easy, because trying to change people's mindset is difficult. I've done it in lots of the corporate side when I was at various businesses. Trying to change the way people do things is a real challenge, and you've got to try and do it in a very positive way. And when the market is as big as every electrician and every plumber potentially uses, it's been a massive challenge for me. But I'm really lucky now that, PAS came in. A lot of clients have seen it. A lot of retrofit coordinators are now seeing this product and going, actually, this is a product we're specifying to make sure we deliver the best quality that we possibly can under our PAS requirements.
But I'll tell you one other, I think Swifix is a fantastic product, but the other thing that really stands out for me as well is how
It's a family-run business.
Absolutely, yeah.
You've got other people in your
family
family
involved, and your partner, and people support you on that, and that's what people like to see, the passion and the personality that goes into it.
And I better say it, as a podcast, my wife is actually my business partner. I better say it, that, everybody says it, but behind every great man, I've put her through a lot of stuff, with, losing everything. And she stood by me because obviously, we've been together for a long, long time. I met her when I was 16. So having her part of the business now, it is amazing for me. And it is absolutely, and, in time, my daughter will be part of the business. She's just been promoted in her current job into management. So she's going to learn a lot of management. She's experienced that, in a few years, we'd poach her and bring her into the fold.
Do it. Well, listen, that's sort of the interview side about your career. What I'm also very interested in, and this is where we sort of interlink as well, is on the idea of skills and participation of getting more green jobs in the economy. We're talking about this at the GCAP last week, and obviously, we've been talking about several things like developing courses that are proof of competence, for example. So I've seen it. You've got a massive passion for teaching other people, passing on your skills.
I think it's my duty.
How do you get into that?
Right. So yes, that was in it. I got into it by chance, really. I was sort of finished off my career working for the last sort of 5 years up until a year ago. So the previous 5 years, from 2017 for 5 years, I actually went and worked in the housing sector. Because I developed the project, the Swifix products, and I took some time out to do that. And then once I'd got the product to market, it was like, I need a job, I need to find some income. And it was a strange one because the products had been nominated for the Innovative Product of the Year at the Housing Awards. And by this time, I hadn't even sold a product. It was the concept that got there. We didn't win it, but what I did, I bumped into an ex-colleague of mine who then said, "What are you doing now?" I sort of explained, and I'm looking for a job. And he said, "Look, here's the name of a guy. Go and phone him up. He'll rip your arm off. He could use somebody like you in your experience. Great job until your products take off." I ended up staying there 5 years. So what I got there was a really good understanding of the social housing sector from the inside. Having worked as a contractor to the sector, it was really good to see the inner workings. But literally, in May of 2023, it was obvious to me, having picked up some significant contracts with people like Sky, that actually this business needs me full time now. So I qualified and I thought, what can I do part-time? Because I didn't think the Swifix business would require me 5 days a week. So I thought, what am I going to do? So I trained and become a qualified retrofit coordinator. So I did the diploma. And I thought, actually, I'm going to do maybe 2 days a week as a retrofit coordinator. It's my passion. I love renewals. I know what I'm talking about. And it was at that time I was a member of the GCAP, which is the Green Construction Advisory Panel set up by Exeter College and Exeter City Council, which is a consortium of installers, suppliers, organisations, sitting around a table, identifying what are the skill shortages in our area and what training do we need in order to upskill and to actually develop the future generations. And it was there that I got approached by the college who said, we've got this plan, we've got this ambition, we want to start and develop a retrofit academy for the college because we see this as a real positive step for the Southwest as a region. And your name keeps being mentioned as an expert. Now, I'm not an expert. I do have to say that. And I think, it depends on your definition of an expert. I'm an expert, or you're an expert if you know more about the subject than the person you're talking to.
Yeah.
But I don't class myself as, I just class myself as having quite a lot of knowledge and experience in the sector. And they said, we'd really like you to help us develop this. So literally I got introduced to the college. The first thing I did was I developed a 12-day boot camp.
Did Mike approach you?
Mike Blegley from Exeter College. He's director of apprentices and future skills. And he said, we want to develop these courses. We need some help. So the first course I developed was a 12-day boot camp, level 2 understanding of retrofit. And that was a practical and a theoretical course over 12 days that gave people the knowledge and understanding of what PAS is, the knowledge and understanding of what retrofit is, and a real hands-on experience of applying external wall insulation in a practical sense. That was sort of advertised. It was funded, and we ran that for sort of 3 or 4 months, and it went really well. And that's when I said to Mike, but Mike, I said, I've got this idea that we've got all of these courses available for new entrants. So like the City and Guilds Insulation of Building Treatments qualification, great course. But my concern was I've been in this industry 30 years, and likewise, a lot of people in this industry have been doing it for a long, long time. And the challenge for that is that, would I want to go on an 18-month apprenticeship to learn about EWI? I'm a qualified plasterer. I'm a City and Guilds indentured plasterer. And then when I asked the question...
That's one side of it, isn't it?
That's one side of it. And that was the question I asked, is I want to be able to demonstrate my competency in EWI. I spoke to various organisations, and they all said the same, well, you need to do the City and Guilds Insulation of Building Treatments. And I'm like, but if people feel like I do, that have been doing EWI for years, that they're going to have to do an apprenticeship, I think that's bonkers. So what I did is I said to Mike at the college, I said, look, what we'll develop is we'll develop a certificate of competence that demonstrates competency of an existing installer. So somebody who's been doing it for years, who knows how to do an install, will develop a set of courses, not only demonstrates their capability and competence, but we'll also then teach them about PAS and retrofit and the interactions of EWI when it comes to other measures in terms of interfaces, cold bridging, thermal bridges, the type of material. So it's an all-embracing course around PAS, around product, and around a competency to install delivery. Now, we were really lucky that the college has then taken them to an awarding body, which is the National NOCN, which is a National Open Network colleges or consortium.
But it's good though, because
it's the NOCN. They're an international accreditation body.
Absolutely.
So they've accredited. And basically what that means is that now we are able to deliver this course to existing people. And the key here is that unlike an NVQ level 3, of which this course delivers exactly the same content, the same pathways, the same modules, the only difference being that this isn't a recognized NVQ level 3, although it teaches the same. The big difference between these courses and any other course that you can get for NVQ level 3 out in the marketplace is this is going to be delivered by experts. This is going to be delivered by the system designers who want to ensure that the people installing their products know what they're doing. And that's a real key difference to me. So whilst it's not an NVQ recognized course yet, and the long-term plan is it will go through that process, but unfortunately it can take 12 to 18 months. This is a certificate of competence that's endorsed by all of the major players in the sector. So SWIGA, the insurance company, by INCA, the Insulators and Cladding Association, by the NIA, the National Insulation Association, by Exeter College, and by the NOCN. So for me, with my social housing hat on, if a customer comes to me, a client comes to me and says, we're going to do your EWI, and I say to them, under PAS, you need to demonstrate that you've got the skills and competency of teams to deliver it. They're going to produce me a certificate of competence endorsed by all of those major players. So as a client, I'm going to go, well, that to me ticks the box and tells me they've got a certificate because they know what they're doing, irrespective whether it's a level 2, level 3 MBQ, which we want to aspire to get this course to. And there's also other courses. There's 6 other courses we've developed for IWI, for loft insulation, and various other courses that are for existing installers. I accept that anybody new into the sector needs to do an apprenticeship, and I'm all for that. And the industry is trying to develop a bespoke apprenticeship, and I'm working with INCA on their training committee to actually make that work. We're working with people like iFate and various other organisations, City and Guild. So but that's where we're at the moment. And the exciting thing for me is that we held an open day to a lot of the system designers, and they all opened their arms up and embraced it and said, this is absolutely amazing. This is great. This is what the sector needs.
Can I just make a very important point, what you just said? So you've definitely, I think, described the micro points there in terms of, from an individual perspective, if you know what you're doing and other people know what you're doing, well, there has to be, a way that's efficient to prove that they know what they're doing. So that's going to fill that gap. But from a macro perspective, we've got 2025, 2030, 2035 targets. How quick are we going to get, the skilled labor to deliver that? So we need things now, as you keep alluding to.
Absolutely. And that's
to get our participation up.
Absolutely.
So we can deliver on all of these big challenges that we've got.
Of course,
for the economy.
Of course. And it's not just the EWI that needs upskilling, it's the whole retrofit sector, it's solar PV, it's air source heat, it's the whole bang, it's mechanical ventilation, it's the whole lot needs to be there. And for me, I think working in a big corporate in the construction sector, working in the social housing sector, which is very extremely regulated, working in the education sector, which is really regulated, what they all have in common is it's difficult to change. If we're going to rely on the traditional ways of certifying competence in terms of apprenticeships and training certificates, we are never going to develop those skills in the next 3 years. It's going to take years to develop those courses. What we have to do now is we've got an existing workforce that we can upskill by using these types of courses, which the NOCN have said, this to us is the future of upskilling. It's short courses for people who are already competent to prove their competence. So I do see the future of these kinds of courses popping up. For example, an MVQ level 3 on fitting of rail systems on domestic properties for solar PV. Why do you need an electrician to do that? Why do you need a roofer with all those complex things they learn about hip roofs and various things? You need somebody who knows how to do a rail system. That's a simple course to develop. The head of the task force of government was at our meeting at GCAP the other week and said, we're already developing these courses, which is great. We need to bring all that together into a central point, so we haven't got lots of people reinventing the wheel trying to achieve the same objective. And I think that's where GCAP, and its sort of growth across the UK now is amazing, because I think that's the platform to say, look, guys, these are courses that have been developed by the industry for the industry that you can demonstrate your competency of existing people. That to me is the ultimate aim. And if we can achieve that, then I don't see any issue in developing the skills that we need now. Your second part of the question is, what do you think about the future? Well, I think
Well, I was going to come to that. I was going to say, well, look, let's have a crystal ball moment here. Let's win 2030 today. What do what do you see out there? How does the industry look like?
in 2030, I think you will have an army of retrofit people out there qualified to deliver this. The question, the concern I've got is the target set by government. I could quote lots of numbers, 2,000 installs a day, every day for the next 35 years, and we'll never hit the target. So I think what governments have got to realize is that it's all right setting a target, but it's got to be achievable. The industry said we need 260,000 more entrants to be able to deliver net zero. They're not going to come from just waiting for people to jump on board. We've got to be advertising these careers. We've got to be telling people how exciting a career it is. And it all starts in the next generation.
And what's a green job? We've got to define it.
What a green job is anything that potentially is going to help the planet, save energy costs. There's a whole raft of things you can put under net.
And I think sometimes they're not clearly defined.
I think you're right. I think from my perspective, we're talking about retrofitting domestic homes. So this is about reducing people's energy costs, increasing the longevity of a building, adding value to a building. It demonstrates, EWI demonstrated under the RICS, these properties are valued more if they've got this. I think it's going to be pushed.
And don't forget health and well-being.
Absolutely. The health benefits to having clean air, which is part and parcel of the process of EWI with good ventilation. It could say, there's lots of documents out there, Nick. There's a document that demonstrates that by insulating and putting ventilation could save the national health billions of pounds because of ill health due to damp and mold and poor air quality. So there's a whole host of reasons I could talk for hours on what it is. But where do I see it in 2030? I do see it as a booming industry. I'm that positive. I've been through the bust of the FIT tariff. I've been through the RHI cuts. I've seen the failure of Green Deal. I've seen the failure of the voucher schemes. As much as government will tell you it's a success, the industry will tell you all of them have failed. And that's really prevented investment from businesses into the sector because it's a boom and bust. I honestly genuinely think we're in a position now where climate change is a big driver. I think where insulation is absolutely key to reducing people's energy costs, which are only going to spiral. We've got the crisis everywhere around the world with the cost of oil and electricity. So I do see this sector being around for the next 50, 100 years. I don't see it changing like we have, but it's going to be honestly driven in terms of growth by government and support that government's able to give.
And do you think, so then that kind of goes to my final question there, looking at the fabric measures and mainly our sector, external insulation sector, other than the skills shortages and the gaps, do you see anything else that's missing to kind of stop
getting us to that?
I've got to be honest, I don't see anything that's stopping us. It is the skills shortage that's going to stop the delivery of the volume, if that makes sense. I think when people realise, and the more people that start to realise the benefits of external wall insulation, and I've been, there's times that I'm in my career, I've gone in and I've been so proud to have insulated a house because you've got an old person there that was paying an absolute fortune, and you go back 2 months later, they go, do you know what? My bill is a quarter, if not less than a quarter of what it used to be. And to give that person some hope that actually they can now afford to put the heater on during the winter and not just an hour a day, gives me a great sense of satisfaction. And I think that for me is why I'm in it, because you can do some really good positive stuff for people and help people that need the help. Then you've got the afford to pay market. That just makes good business sense. If I can invest some money and save a load of money on my energy bills, which will get paid back over a number of years.
That's what we're missing. See that there, access to good quality, accessible, low interest.
Absolutely. Well, you must be aware the government launched the able to pay funding support last month. I don't know enough detail.
Looking at them, I think there's some good projects out there that I'm hopefully going to see some good results from. I think there's definitely, how do you say, there's a gaps there between, say, your high street lenders offering mainstream products for customers. At the moment, when you look at a green mortgage, for instance, beneath all that, it's all it says really is, well, actually, I'm paying a lower rate of interest for my mortgage because my house is energy efficient. Well, what about the person who wants to get there?
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because that for me is, I'm aware of conversations with people, and what's obvious to me is there's lots of work going on in the background around how are we going to support the green revolution, for want of a better word, from government. And, there's talk of, well, it starts with the lenders. They need to be green to start with. So, the lending companies. So let's start with them. And then there's schemes like, mortgage companies might lend you more money than you need so that you can actually green your house and actually give that on a much more discounted rate. So there's lots of funding mechanisms. There's a lot of private finance that are interested in investing in this. But unfortunately, this is my personal view. There's a lot of financial pension schemes, all these people with lots of portfolios of money. They want to invest in this because they can see the future. The problem for them is that historically, the insulation sector has taken a bit of a bum rap. The Bonfield report that was created, wasn't very flattering to the industry, and unfortunately focused on the failures, not all of the thousands of good stuff that was done as well. So I think the reality for me is why PAS was introduced, why you've got Trustmark overseeing it, so that we can demonstrate as a sector that actually this is what we've done. Look at the outputs we've achieved and look at the benefits. And I think when that's in a place where investors are confident, I think you will see a lot of private finance coming into this sector offering funds. I really do. I think that is the future. And I think that is how we are going to generate, the roller coaster, if you like, that we could start on that journey to make not just 50,000 houses a year insulated, but 100 to 150 to 200,000 every year being delivered. You know as well as I do, we know it's solid wall alone. There are over 7 million properties that need external wall. We've got the worst properties in Europe for air leakage. So for me, the future is really, really exciting. And for anybody coming into this sector, it starts right at the beginning. So for me, and part of my role with Exeter is we're going to be going into primary schools. We're going to be going into secondary schools. We're going to be telling people what it's like to be part of this green revolution. It's not come into construction, you can be a carpenter. It's come into the sector and help deliver things. Absolutely. So you can learn an electrician as an apprentice, but then you can do solar PV, you can do air source heat pumps. So it's widening that spectrum of, as surveys have been done, a lot of 16 to 18-year-olds are aware of the climate. They want to know how can they help. And at the moment, I don't think they're aware of the opportunity, not just in the fitting, but in the retrofit coordination, the management, the assessments, the surveying. There's so many roles associated with this that it's an amazing career to be involved in. And actually now's the time to get involved, right at the beginning, when it's all going to start to happen. So that's for me. I'm hoping in the future that, maybe let's do this interview in 3 years' time, and then we'll see where we are.
Let's use this as a bit of a benchmark.
Yeah.
No, Paul, listen, it's an exciting future, I think. And looking at this interview holistically and what you've said today, and I've known you for a while as well, and what people have said about you, I would say they need your voice. They will describe you as the elder statesman of the construction sector, and we need people like that, to kind of be there to kind of push in the right direction. I mean, you are a ballast of accumulation of knowledge and experience, and we're going to need people like yourself to support us, on that journey. And my final question, before we wrap this interview up, is
okay.
When you end your career, how would you like to be remembered?
Oh man, how would I like to be remembered? I would like to be remembered and provide a legacy that I was the person that changed the way that external wall insulation furniture was fitted. That's all. Is that I'm the man, who developed a product that became best practice, became the product of choice, and that every single installation across Europe and the UK was using Swifix. That's it. I have to say, though, that the Swifix product's got to a point now where it needs very little involvement from me. So I'm looking now at the next venture.
Okay.
And all I can say is that watch this space. Yeah.
Well, Paul, listen, this was terrific. I thank you very much for your time and hope to do again this sometime in the future.
I just want to say thank you to you, Nick. It's been a pleasure. And good luck in the future.
You too.
Exciting times ahead.
Yes.